My name's Keith Johnson, turning 42 this year. I graduated college and immediately started working at a trading company, but I couldn't adjust to it at all. Now, I'm working at a coffee shop run by my uncle. After 12 years of service at the trading company, I lived somewhat of a jobless life. I lost interest in everything, even social interactions became a dread. My lifestyle could be easily described as reclusive. The person who brought me out of this was my uncle. A man so obsessed with coffee that he opened up his own specialty shop. In the beginning, I started helping out in the shop somewhat aimlessly, but I soon found myself increasingly captivated by the allure of coffee. Looking back, I'm convinced that this was my uncle's strategy. I'm naturally timid, not good at interacting with people. I was introverted, even shy. It's embarrassing to admit, but I've never had a girlfriend, even at the age of 42. I need to set the record straight, though, there's a reason for this. I was raised in a predominantly female household. My father passed away early due to illness. Living with my mother and two assertive sisters, and on top of that, there are even more assertive younger sisters. My place at home was minute, to say the least. Growing up surrounded by strong women, I developed a kind of fear and respect for women. I grew into a man too intimidated to approach women. I'm okay with the regulars at the shop, like the older women, but that's about it. Even the local elementary school girl, Emma, calls me Keith casually. That proves how lucky I am. My uncle's coffee shop attracts coffee lovers who gather almost daily. Many of them are even more knowledgeable than me, so I have a lot to learn. I can't do without a notebook at work. I jot down everything I notice or have been taught, so I don't forget. My uncle calls it secret notebook. While I was checking new coffee beans with my notebook in hand, the doorbell rang with a jingle. "Excuse me, hello." Spotting me, he cheerfully greets me, deftly maneuvering his wheelchair closer to the counter. He smoothly transfers from his wheelchair to the stool at the counter using only his arm strength. As always, he does it with ease. His name is Alex Miller, a regular at the shop and a wheelchair user. When we first met, I didn't know how to act. Should I help him? If so, how should I assist him? All I could do was fret. As I stood there worrying, Alex, just like today, smoothly sat down at the counter and laughed. Don't look at me like I'm performing a circus act. From the day we met, Alex and I became good friends. Alex, a coffee lover who frequents this shop, is a treasure trove of knowledge for me. Eager to learn everything, I listen to Alex share his knowledge. Despite being best friends, Alex is only 28 this year. He's 14 years younger than me. And yet, Alex seems far more mature than me. I feel like he's experienced a much denser life than mine. Despite probably having had difficulties that he couldn't share with anyone, Alex was always cheerful. He's the kind of guy who laughs off the fact that I quit my job and stayed home for a few years. Currently, Alex is working as a translator from home and often visits the shop to take a break. He often works at the counter with his laptop until closing time. Many of our regular customers are also fans of Alex. Alex is ridiculously handsome. And he's so polished it's somewhat intimidating. I once went shopping with him for clothes. At that time, the outfit that Alex had chosen for me has now become my go-to for important events, just waiting for its moment to shine. But even someone as flawless as Alex has a weakness. Alex has a twin sister. It seems that he simply can't stand up to her. I've been to Alex's house a few times. I've met his mom, but I've never met his sister. I heard some somewhat scary rumors from our regular customers around the same age at the shop. The most common rumor is that she used to be a punk. I didn't ask Alex directly, but I heard this from our regular customers and the clerk. As someone who's not good at women, assertive women are my worst nightmare. I swore to myself that I would definitely keep my distance. Who would have thought that such a turn of events was waiting for me? That day, after working at the shop until closing time, I drove Alex home. His home is on the way, so it is no big deal to drive him home. I ran into Alex's mother, Marianne, who had just come back from her part-time job, at the entrance. It had been a while since I saw her last, and Marianne has a strikingly beautiful face. As we were making small talk, Marianne suddenly clapped her hands together as if she had an idea. Then she said to me, "Keith, would you like to go on a blind date?" I was flabbergasted at the sudden proposal of a blind date. But Marianne, with a grin on her face, moved the conversation forward. Basically, she was suggesting that I go on a blind date with the rumored sister. The ex-delinquent almost slipped out of my mouth, but I managed to hold it back. Alex said, "That's a great idea." Surrounded by the parent and child, I felt cornered with no way out. She's a bit older, but I think a gentle guy like you would be perfect for Evelyn. That was the first time I learned her name. Apparently, she's currently living alone and working as an office worker at a printing company in the neighboring town, Nebraska. The fact that she hasn't been around since she started working only fuels the ex-troublemaker theory. But I don't know anything about her, and shouldn't her thoughts on this matter too? Marianne smiled at my flustered response. "Everyone's a stranger on a blind date. It'll be fine." I had no rebuttal to her completely reasonable opinion. In the end, they kind of pressured me into agreeing to just meet her. Sooner is better, and the date and location were decided on the spot. Marianne was quick to set everything up before I could change my mind. The following Sunday, a somewhat fancy cafe in the middle of a park. That's where I was going to blind date Alex's sister. The weather was incredibly nice, and the park was filled with families. When I told my uncle that it was a blind date, he let me have the day off without a second thought. Alex would be there too, figuring I'd be nervous at first. I wore the outfit Alex had chosen for me and waited for them to arrive. "Keith, sorry to keep you waiting," Alex's voice called out. I turned around to see Alex in his wheelchair, smiling. Standing behind him was a woman who looked just like him, a real beauty. Upon seeing her, I was momentarily lost for words. I thought, I've never seen such a beautiful woman before. She had the same face as Alex, whom I was so used to seeing, but she was incredibly beautiful. And she looked very grumpy. Probably forced to come here by Alex. Her face seemed to be saying, "I'm not happy about this." "Oh, this is my sister, Evelyn. She's a 28-year-old office worker." Evelyn gives a small nod in response. I nod my head and mumble, "Nice to meet you." I was already nervous about this blind date. Besides, I saw such a beauty, I couldn't find the words to say. "Are you both nervous?" Alex teases. Without missing a beat, Evelyn's hand slaps the back of Alex's head. She's quick. There might be some truth to the rumor that she used to be a bit of a wild one. "Don't tease people like that," Evelyn says in a slightly husky voice. For someone like me, who isn't a fan of the high-pitched voices typical of some girls, Evelyn's voice was perfect. I don't remember much of what happened after that. Alex kept the conversation flowing, and Evelyn and I responded with yes and no. That was our blind date. When Alex left, we sat in silence, and time seemed to stand still. Thank you for today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day off too." Evelyn's eyes meet mine as I begin to stutter. Feeling as though I'm being stared by her, my words trailed off. No, I should apologize. Alex and the others pushed you into this, Evelyn says, bowing her head. She seemed far removed from her wild past, which left me speechless. As I sat in stunned silence, Evelyn stood up, quickly grabbed the check, and said, "Well then," before leaving. Her brisk movements didn't give me a chance to stop her, leaving me stunned. I didn't expect to be left alone. And she even paid the bill. At least the blind date mission was accomplished. I gazed at the park, thinking that as long as we had met, Alex and the others would be satisfied. The next day, when Alex came into the shop, he asked me about what happened after he left, but there was no progress and nothing to talk about. Evelyn left before me. I said, trying not to look at Alex. He then handed me his phone. What? Call Evelyn and set up the next date. I pushed Alex's phone back, repeating, I can't do that. She seemed so unhappy, and I was sure she didn't want to see me again. I'd let her pay for the coffee even though she's 14 years younger, and I figured she must be annoyed. As we shoved phones back and forth across the counter, the doorbell rang, announcing a customer. Welcome. As a reflex, I greeted the customer with a smile and saw Evelyn with a sour look on her face. I froze for a moment. I nodded to Evelyn and moved over to Alex. What, Evelyn, are you off work today? Alex, surprised to see her out and about on a weekday. I took a day off. You see, there was a solo exhibition for Professor, but more importantly, you shouldn't be going out dressed so lightly. Evelyn responded, placing a blanket on Alex's knee. In her hand, she held a small silver oil heater. She probably brought it because she was concerned about Alex, who tends to feel unwell when it gets cold. Oh, the wood carving exhibition, right. It's next week, isn't it? Apparently, she had come to help set up the wood carving exhibition that starts next week at the community center. Evelyn, a graduate of a fine arts college, seems to have majored in wood carving. It's difficult to make a living solely from it, so she's now selling small wooden carvings as a side job. I have some of my works there too. You should check them out, Evelyn said with a light smile. Her whole demeanor changes when she smiles. She has a beauty that seems somewhat irritable when she's not smiling, but when she smiles, she looks cute. It's a softer image than I had of her during our blind date, and it's quite a pleasant surprise. Maybe this is where I need to muster up my courage. I plucked up the courage to speak to Evelyn. Thank you for the other day, Evelyn. Upon hearing my sudden address, Evelyn seemed taken aback and her shoulders shivered. Without looking at me, she answered in a small voice, "You're welcome." For some reason, I didn't feel like she disliked me. I might be conceited, but she seemed shy. "Would you like to go out sometime?" I blurted out the words before I even realized it. It seems like my desire to know more about her got the better of me. Seeing her surprised look, I pressed on. Eventually, after my plea to go out on another date, Evelyn gave in. This was the first time I had ever pleaded so earnestly with someone. Of course, this was all thanks to Alex's support. I don't think I could have invited her out on my own. Our date was set for 3 days later. The meeting time was in the evening after work. I waited for her in front of a bookstore, our designated meeting place. She arrived right on time. It wasn't as tense as the blind date, but I was feeling jittery and couldn't calm down. Well, it was my first date, and I was nervous, so she probably felt the same way. I booked a Vietnamese restaurant, keeping in mind her preferences. This was also thanks to Alex's advice. Even after we arrived and settled at the restaurant, she seemed a bit jittery. She seemed disinterested in what I was saying, and I started to feel sad. The conversation wasn't flowing, and she wasn't eating much. Despite ordering a course filled with her favorite dishes, she seemed to find dining with me very unpleasant. She must have agreed to this date reluctantly because of Alex. As I thought about this, I started to feel more and more downcast. I had mustered up all my courage, but it felt like I had swung at thin air. "I'm sorry, I think I forced you into having this meal with me." As I put down my chopsticks and said this, Evelyn, who seemed surprised, looked at me. It might be the first time today that our eyes met squarely. "I'm sorry too. I wasn't really paying attention." She quickly apologized. Being considered by someone younger made me feel pathetic. It must have shown on my face. She looked at me with a truly apologetic face. "I promise I won't invite you out again, so please relax." Managing a smile, I relayed this to her. In response, she placed her hands together and bowed her head in front of me. "I'm really sorry. I'm so distracted thinking about Alex's date." Evelyn, with her hands together and bowing as if praying to me, apologized again and again. Tonight, it seemed Alex was also going on a date with a girl. And apparently, it would be their first time going out, just two of them. Alex was undoubtedly popular, but he never had a girlfriend. He told me once that he didn't want to bother the person he liked because he often had to be mindful on dates. That's why he didn't have a girlfriend. So, this was Alex's first date. I could understand why my sister, Evelyn, was on edge. I mean, there are many obstacles, like restrooms, steps, and stuff, right? I'm just worried if Alex might mess up in front of the girl he likes. Considering this, I made a suggestion to Evelyn. "Well then, let's go and secretly watch over Alex's date." Evelyn looked puzzled at my suggestion and exclaimed, "Huh? She probably never imagined that I would suggest such a thing." I quickly stood up with the bill in my hand. "You know where they're having their date, right?" Evelyn nodded affirmatively and took my hand. I had heard that she did wood carving, and her palm, full of calluses, proved that she was serious about it. I was somewhat pleased to discover this new side of her. The place where Alex and his date were was close to the restaurant where we were dining. It was an Italian restaurant, well equipped with accessibility features. I went there with Alex a few times. Peering through the large window, I could see Alex and her. People passing by gave us suspicious looks as we hid across the busy street, secretly watching them. From what we could see, there didn't seem to be any problems. He was with a cute girl, reminiscent of cotton candy. They looked like a perfect couple. I thought Evelyn's concerns were unfounded. But, as she continued to intently watch the two of them, Evelyn's expression was dead serious. At that moment, I wondered if this might be the reason for the rumors about her past as a delinquent. "Hey, can I ask you something?" "What? I'm a bit busy right now," she replied, still focused on watching Alex. Watching over Alex in his company, Evelyn was indifferent to my questioning. "Is the rumor about you being a former delinquent true?" "What? Are you crazy? You just asked this to me." Taken aback by my question, Evelyn unintentionally stood up and shouted. Realizing that she would be noticed by Alex and his date if she wasn't quiet, she quickly crouched down and glared at me. "I don't fully understand what delinquent means, but I am not one," she said. So, I asked her why such a rumor had spread. She puckered her lips in irritation. The reason of it all was a fight with a classmate. Back in high school, there was a girl who often bothered Alex. One day during gym class, that girl purposely blocked Alex's wheelchair with her belongings. Unable to exit the classroom, Alex attempted to get past the items but ended up toppling over with his wheelchair. When Evelyn found Alex in this state, she was livid and attacked the girl. She dragged the girl through the hallway to Alex and forced her to apologize. The girl cried loudly, refusing to acknowledge what she did. Evelyn, who dragged the girl around while she was crying out loud, later became a feared entity. That's said to be where the rumors of her being a former delinquent started. She admits that she may have gone too far, but she smiled and said she had no regrets. She probably thought that girl was trying to get Alex's attention. Evelyn said she also came to that conclusion as an adult, but she couldn't forgive it. So, the supposed ex-delinquent sister was just a sister who loved her little brother. The misunderstanding somehow made me chuckle. As I was laughing quietly, Evelyn smacked my back. "Evelyn, would you seriously consider dating me? I know I'm like an old man to you, but what do you think?" Her eyes widened in surprise at my confession, while I was crouching hidden behind the shrubs. No good. I gave it another push, and Evelyn stood up, brushing off the fallen leaves on her knee. She started walking, so I hurriedly followed her. As we walked shoulder to shoulder, Evelyn looked up at me from the corner of her eye. Then she said, "Show me that thing of yours." "Excuse me, here, now." "You showed it to Alex, but not to me." With a harsh whisper, I gulped. "Show me that, your notebook." By that, Evelyn meant my notebook where I jot down what I study about coffee. I have showed it to Alex once. Apparently, Evelyn heard about it from Alex. I wonder why she wants to see such a thing. While puzzled, I pulled the notebook out of my bag and handed it to Evelyn. Taking the notebook, Evelyn sat on the edge of a flower bed and started flipping through it. After about 5 minutes, she looked up from my notebook and smiled. "You passed." "What? What passed?" As Evelyn returned my notebook to me with a smile. I was clueless. "Looking at this notebook, I can see what kind of person you're, Kita. I can tell you're very sincere and serious." Is this what they call hot and cold? Suddenly, my heart started pounding. "So I'm sure there are many things I don't know, but please take good care of me," Evelyn said, bowing her head to me. The sudden turn of events left my mind reeling. "Does this mean you've agreed to be my girlfriend?" I couldn't help but confirm, and instantly, I felt an impact on the back of my head. It seems she still had the habit of hitting first. That day, we talked about our dreams for the future. I have a dream of becoming a barista. Evelyn had a dream of becoming a wood-carving sculptor. When it comes to talking about our dreams, we both get excited. Evelyn suggested making a competition out of who can realize their dream first. I agreed. It was a moment that I convinced myself to become a barista seriously. There exists something called barista study abroad. It's a study abroad where you intern at overseas cafes and gain professional knowledge as a barista. Half a year after starting to date Evelyn, I was in Italy. Even before me, she quit her job and started working as a wood-carving sculptor in earnest. I couldn't stand the idea of being left behind, so I decided to study abroad. Knowing that if I go abroad, we'd end up in a long-distance relationship, I expected her to stop me, but Evelyn kicked me out the door with a push on my back. I wanted her to say she would miss me a little, but her apparent relief was just like her. Yet, being cheerfully sent off made me feel like I was being brushed aside. She hardly ever reached out. After my internship ended, I kept dragging my return home and started avoiding meeting her again. I kept thinking, what if she's disappointed in me, or maybe she's not contacting because she found someone else? For half a year, another half a year, I ended up spending 2 years in Italy. I had also earned a few barista qualifications that are recognized in Japan. I can return home now, but I couldn't make up my mind. Plus, I was a little sad to leave Italy. I had been working part-time at the same long-established store where I did my internship. The chime of the doorbell rang out in the empty cafe, signaling the arrival of a customer. As I lifted my face from the coffee I was brewing, I saw an unbelievable face. It was Evelyn, who was supposed to be in Japan. She had become even more beautiful over the 2 years. With a glare fixed on me, she sat down across the counter, right in front of my eyes. "You've kept me waiting too long." Still glaring at me, as she thrust a flyer in front of my eyes. The flyer was for Evelyn's solo exhibition in New York. I realized in an instant that Evelyn had achieved her dream. "I'll treat you to a cup of coffee," I say calmly, suppressing my joy, and start working with my hands. Evelyn seemed a little displeased that I wasn't flustered as before. "Well, you'd expect some changes after spending 2 years in Italy. Smooth interaction is also necessary for a barista." Evelyn waited for her coffee with a pout on her beautiful face. I thought it ruined a good-looking face. I placed a latte with latte art in front of Evelyn. Upon seeing the latte art, Evelyn muttered, "Damn it." I almost laughed at her adorable frustration. But I was nervous too. The latte art on the latte I handed over read, "Will you marry me?" and Evelyn stirred it violently with her spoon, pretending not to see. She drank the latte in one gulp, with a look of indifference on her face. "I'll have to treat me to another 100 cups to make up for the wait." "I'll write it as many times as it takes until you're satisfied," I replied. Evelyn seemed pleased with my words and nodded. Then she whispered, "Don't forget what you just said." I got Evelyn's consent to our marriage 3 days later. When I murmured, "You fell pretty easily, didn't you?" she hit the back of my head with a surprising force. I guess she remained aggressive for the rest of her life.